Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.com.
Are you looking to grow revenues?
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05 Talking Small Business. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and excited to be hanging out with you once again on Tuesday evening. As you know, each week we have a great guest talking about important topics that can help you as a business owner be more successful, because at the end of the day, your business can only go as far as you're prepared to lead it. And that's why we bring in experienced leaders from small businesses who have an expertise in understanding how small businesses work and can share valuable knowledge and insights that can help you run your business more effectively and achieve better results faster and easier. So tonight our topic is powering your business to maximum momentum. So those of you who are technical and remember taking physics, momentum is M times V, or mass times velocity. So, the faster something goes, the more impactful it is, as well as, the more mass it has, the more impact it is. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how to move your business forward, but also make your business more massive so that you can have the biggest impact possible in the easiest, fastest way. So tonight my guest is Chip Higgins, and that's really his area of specialization. So look forward to talking to him further about this. And as always, I welcome you tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. I welcome any questions, comments, ideas you have during the show. And let me bring in Chip real quick. Hey, Chip, good evening. How are you doing today?
Great, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. I'm glad to have you on as well. I don't know who ordered all this burning hot weather across the country today, but at least we got some AC, so it's not as bad as it could be. Excellent. So I'm really excited about talking to you tonight about really maximizing momentum within people's businesses. But before we get started, it would be great to have people have a better understanding of who you are and your background experience, and really, what how you got to where you are and what you're doing. So, if you could take a couple minutes to do that, that would be great.
Fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, I'm fairly new to entrepreneurship. I spent 40 years in the banking industry working with small business owners. And one of the rare bankers that got into it on purpose. I think most people in banking, if you talk to them, they kind of accidentally dropped into it, but it was something that I aspired to. I grew up in a banking town in Winston-Salem and ultimately moved to Nashville. I lived right outside of Nashville, and I spent 40 years here working with business owners directly, initially as a relationship manager, and then over the course of, 3 different banks and all the consolidation and everything that's happened in our industry, in executive roles where I was working on the brand and basically how we connect the bank with business owners to make them successful. And I think early on that had almost everything to do with capital. We were taking deposits, but trying to deliver credit responsibly, but also quickly and efficiently. And I think probably in the last 10 years of my career, I came to understand that it was a very small piece of the entrepreneur's puzzle was the money. There was a lot going on in every business strategically with the energy that they have. And in the background is kind of this lingering statistic that half of the businesses won't make it past 5 years. And I think it really changed my, I guess, my intention for my life and what I wanted to do. And so I guess back in 2019, I started Bizzics, which is a small business coaching consulting firm. In 2024, April, I published my book, The Bizzics Way. And Bizzics is really taking the momentum law that you mentioned, mass times velocity, and applying it to business in a very intentional way. I'd found over the years that a lot of people talk about momentum. I think business is a very physical environment. We use a lot of physics terms of leverage and crushing goals and, all kinds of things. And I think my calling was to figure out, is momentum, the physics part of momentum, a real thing in business? And can I build it out as a framework that anybody can latch onto? Because if something is a universal law, it ought to apply to everything. And we see momentum every day of our lives in one way or another. And I'm really pleased with how the book turned out. It's been doing very well on Amazon. And, my mission now at this stage of my life is to share this message with people and maybe put a little dent in the statistic about business failure. It's, there's the statistical side of it, and there's the human side, which I've seen way too often where companies don't make it. And if there's anything I can do in that, and that's where this book came from, I certainly want to help people accomplish their dreams and what's deepest in their heart about trying to help people and making a profit at it. So that's I've been at it now as an entrepreneur, I guess a year and a half or so full time, and learning every hard lesson that every entrepreneur out there has learned. But I'm glad to be in the mix. It's very invigorating, hard, but invigorating. And I'm really glad to be here tonight talking from a couple of different perspectives with you and your audience.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you here. Definitely entrepreneurship is way harder than most people would think. Even if you've been adjacent to entrepreneurship, until you're like actually surviving on your business, it's a whole different thing. But even so, no matter how long you've done it and been involved, there's things that so much more that you can learn. I've been working full time, with entrepreneurs and business owners for over 15 years. And I've worked one-on-one with over 1,000 of them, and just sort of seeing the patterns and everything that's going on. But I'm still seeing new things every week because the world evolves, technology evolves, business evolves. So it's a continuous learning journey. So, that's why I, really like to doing the show, because, I'm learning as well as helping other people learn. And that's really what you have to do to continue to be successful in business. So
I admire your tenure and your intention. I think we're very well aligned. So congratulations on all you've done.
Definitely. Thanks. And same to you. So we're going to get started. But before we do that, we do this program through the Small Business Pro University. So I just want to take a second. We got a short video to share exactly what the Small Business Pro University is. And then once we do that, we'll be back. I'll be back with Chip, and we'll be talking small business.
Fantastic.
Many small businesses experience low or no revenue growth, and the owners are not making enough money. I founded Small Business Pro University to help you break that cycle by empowering you with greater knowledge and enhanced skills to lead your organization more effectively. Over the past 15 years, I've collaborated with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Rising Tide Capital, Empower the Village, NJMEP, Rutgers University, and SCORE to work one-on-one with over 1,000 business owners and teach tens of thousands of people about business. My experience includes serving as a naval officer, managing businesses, graduating from MIT, earning an MBA from NYU, and achieving the CFA designation, which has prepared me to accomplish my mission of helping 1,000,008 business owners to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth by 2028. My vision is to create the ultimate business ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Small Business Pro University empowers entrepreneurs like you to run their businesses more professionally and create sustainable enterprises. We employ my proven proprietary Masterpreneur Playbook framework to guide your journey along the Masterpreneur path and facilitate your Masterpreneur evolution to work on your business and scale faster and easier. Small Business Pro University provides access to valuable resources, partnerships, and relationships that will help you to sell more, maximize profit, and finance growth. Our Masterpreneur initiatives include the Small Business Pro Network, 100+ expert-led multimedia courses, intensive training workshops, Spanish language training, Leadership Live at 8:05 live stream and podcast, in-person Power Breakfast events, and advisory coaching, consulting, and training services.
Okay, good evening. I'm back here with Chip Higgins, talking small business. Tonight's topic is powering your business to maximum momentum with Chip Higgins. So Chip, you talked a little bit about momentum and how it ties into in physics, but also into business as well. Is there a framework or just I like to kind of start with a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about and then sort of go into the details.
Yeah.
So if you could sort of prep us for the conversation that we're going to have more of.
Yeah, really, the framework is the equation, Andrew, that you threw out. I think the mass times velocity, that's where we can dive in and start picking it apart. And I think that was really my intention, is to have a reliable framework that was all about growth and steady progress toward a greater vision of yourself. My experience with business owners has been they accumulate a lot of information at disparate times, and sometimes it's hard to wrap it in a package that says, this is my touchstone that I go back to time and time again. And so you think about mass times velocity, there's probably 1,000 business books out there that would fit somehow into that equation, whether we're talking about, strategy and direction or your culture, or there's so many different things. And what I was hopeful of when I wrote the book is that there's an empowerment part of this that goes with the mindset that you develop, that these are the right ideas for me in my business, because as you know, different industries, different cultures, different requirements are going to lead people to different decisions as they start to actually implement along a framework like mass times velocity. So I think the only thing that is not explicitly stated that is so important is energy. And that really, it's embedded in the velocity part of the equation. So I just want to call that out, that we can't move forward till we actualize energy. There's kinetic energy that moves you forward, and there's stored energy. And what I get excited about with entrepreneurs is that they take this vibration for helping people and coming up with a new solution and actually act on it. So we'll incorporate energy in there as we talk through it, but it really is the framework. I mean, that is the framework, mass times velocity. And it has some interesting nuances when you think about businesses, and especially small businesses. And one of the funniest things that, it's in the book, but, it's a riddle. Like, how can a small business be massive? It's like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the riddle to pass the oracle and get across the bridge. And, there's an answer to it, but, it's an interesting riddle at the same time.
Excellent. Okay. So, sometimes, business doesn't have to be all that complex. I mean, it's really about delivering a product or service for less than people are willing to pay you for.
Right.
And, so, if you take everything back to that, everything else is just strategies to be able to do that more effectively. Being having an engineering background, like formulas. I remember that formula, especially as
remember those guys.
So now we've got mass times velocity. So how do you define mass in terms of a business, and how do you define velocity in terms of a business? It's easy, if you have something moving, but when you're thinking of mass within a business or velocity, what does that really mean to you?
Yeah, I'd like to start with the velocity part of it, because this is kind of a Michael Gerber E-Myth thing. If I'm sure you're familiar with that book, but he talks about the entrepreneurial seizure and how many people decide to get into business for the wrong reasons. It's kind of like they want to own a business, or they want to be independent, or they want to have a new boss or whatever. And when we talk about in the energy chapter is before you get into velocity, you got to have the energy, and there's got to be a strong vibrational field producing this energy that there's someone that you want to serve. There's some demographic, there's some constituency out there that you intend to bring something new or better than what they had before. And I think in the process of all that, my experience has been anyway, that the energy to get going blinds a lot of business owners to what the final game is, which is that you want to dominate a segment, or you want a particular share of a segment. And when you break down, when I wrote the book, I consulted with a good friend of mine who's a Caltech trained physicist, and we just started talking about velocity. And he said, well, velocity is a vector, and vectors require three things. One, they have to have a specific direction, they have to have a speed, and they have to have a distance. And so, when you think about that with the business, what is the direction that you're going toward? And to your point, Andrew, it's not that complicated. That there's a demographic that's going to like your product or your service better than any other demographic. But a lot of times what happens with small business owners is once you start and you got the bills to pay, that target demographic can go out the window. It's like anybody that will pay you for anything that you do is an attractive customer to you. And so staying tight in a strategic framework, where you can measure, like, this is the segment I'm after. This is the percentage of all my revenue that comes out of that. I want X by X date. That's a very strategic question, but are small business owners really thoughtful about that strategy? I think that's an open question, because a lot of them are more. If you asked a business owner, where are you going? What's your vector? It'd be more than last year, or enough to pay the bills. And you really don't get the velocity without that clarity of where you're going, how fast, and how far. So that's a big part of a strategic framework for anybody. But do we really get to that discipline with a small business? And I loved your commercial. I mean, I was eating that up watching that commercial, because that's what you're doing for people. I mean, I can guarantee, without ever having gone through it, like, this is a big conversation that you have with people, and it's lacking for many. So I think all that directional stuff that we talk about in the book, I say, it's about market share, it's about client satisfaction, it's about profitability. You got to have all three. It's a three-dimensional grid that you're penetrating with the business. But the other part of velocity is that we can't be myopic about what we're in. We're in a, as I said earlier, this is a very physical space that we're in. I mean, it's a battering ram when you get out and start doing what you have to do. And so you've got the competitive environment, you have all kinds of environments, regulatory environment, cultural environments, all these things are working on you. And for you to have velocity in your business, like, you've got to not only know where you're going, but be able to navigate every single one of those. And that's where I really find small business owners struggle, is the anticipation of the counterforce that's coming from a physics standpoint, all the counterforces that are pushing against you, and sometimes the forces that are behind you that make you go faster than you can really absorb. And I know you've seen that 100 times or more, working with business owners, is the hyper growth. We can't say no to it. It's like I only wanted 10% market share, but I got 50. And like, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough people. I don't have enough. I don't have enough energy. I don't have any of it. So that's really the velocity part of it. I don't know if we want to stop there and talk a little bit more about that, but I think it's a lot about a clear direction. And, it's like being an airplane pilot. It's like, they're running into stuff all the time. And, I don't know any flight that went on the exact flight path that they planned. So it's the same thing in business.
Definitely. And, like you said, I'm a big fan of Michael Gerber as well. And, but, most business owners aren't prepared for what they're trying to do. And they don't know they're not prepared for it. So that makes it.
And I would say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it's okay to start. I think going from potential energy to kinetic is the most beautiful thing. Like, you're doing something about it. But it's really important to have a sensible timeline of what you have to learn before you'll ever generate any revenue. It's, find your wings on the way down is a great saying. I believe in it because you're going to learn so much. But, when you start throwing like financial constraints, the pressures to get something launched, it's so much better to take your time and figure out the things you need to figure out before you launch. There's one other thing I wanted to say on velocity too, that this is a really important principle to me that came out when I was talking to my physicist friend. And you're an engineer, so you could probably write this equation on a whiteboard for everybody and get it nailed. But I'll just kind of summarize the output of it. As we were talking about speed, and he described to me that the equation, if you talk about speed, the relationship between speed and energy is obviously direct. The faster you want to go, you need more energy, but it's a squared relationship. If you want to go twice as fast, you need 4 times the energy. You want to go 3 times as fast, you need 9 times the energy. And so it takes me back to a big leadership principle about how you manufacture energy in yourself and distribute it to other people, and how you find energy in other people, because you need every bit of energy that you can get. I have seen so many businesses run out of energy way before they ran out of money. And it's something you just have to pay attention to. You can't sustain any velocity without the energy, and you really have to study where your energy is coming from.
Yeah. And we talk about that a lot, because that really is defined by your culture.
Right.
Leadership is so important because, as you grow, you can't do everything yourself.
Right.
And
that's one of the principles in the book, Andrew. I talk about, that the sun is the most powerful energy source that we know, and it's all a vibrational field. These are hydrogen atoms making helium. They're bouncing off each other, and we ought to be bouncing that way off our dream, to create the energy. But to your point, that culture is the power grid. It's what everything runs along. And, if you have a break in that grid where people aren't getting the culture, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. It's going to end up being you. You're just going to get mad.
Yeah.
Tell people you need more.
Right. But also, the only person you should be mad at is you, because that means you're not doing your job, because you're as the owner, the culture is yours.
That's a question I'll ask back to you, because obviously you've dealt with thousands of people. I have this belief that leadership development comes way too late in the entrepreneurial development. There ought to be a lot more leadership development on the front end before you make this dive, because you know that you can't do it on your own. I mean, whatever you're aspiring to, if it's worth anything at all, it's going to require more than you. And that's something that I would throw out to anybody listening to this, is get all the leadership development training and experience that you can, because you're gonna need it.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I wrote an article that was published last month called "Learn to Lead and Lead to Learn," because you need to learn about leadership, but you can't be a great leader without practicing leadership.
Right.
So you got to learn about it, but you also have to do it as part of your growth. But yeah, leadership is super important, especially for the momentum. But the other thing I think you talked about in terms of the velocity and being able to move faster, more effectively, is you have to actually have a plan and one that's thought out and analyzed, so that you can actually build velocity, because then you're not out there winging it and having to change directions all the time.
Yeah, and I think that it has so many implications to me, Andrew. Again, I mean, you've worked with so many people, but in the book I talk about the impact of taking any revenue when it's not the revenue that you designed your operation for. Like, you can have a horrible bottom line because you pursued the wrong revenue and you weren't prepared to fulfill it. So it's a very far-reaching, your anxiety about having a top line that supports your bills can have a counterproductive effect if you're not prepared to fulfill it. And I think if you have something in mind and, you build a system for it, stick to it, and wait and get the customers that you designed your whole process around, and don't start flailing around looking for anybody that will pay you for whatever, renting 400 square feet in the back of your building, or, whatever it is. Like you're just hanging on, trying to make it.
Right. I mean, you definitely want to get beyond that.
Yeah.
But, many people, you do have to be creative to make it.
Oh, yeah.
And most people in business, need some of the money that they're bringing in. Yeah. So,
well, that's helpful down the road. It's like, if you don't have some trials, you're probably not going to be very wise a few years down the road. So,
right. But you do have to, once you can build a certain amount of revenue, you need to get more focused.
Yeah.
And continually become more and more focused. But, early on, many times you may have to try different things, because, you don't really know what you do best.
Right.
And you don't really know exactly what the market needs from you.
Yeah. There's a book a friend of mine wrote called The Hockey Stick Principles. Mm-hmm. His whole belief is you've got to tinker along that flat blade for a while before you take off up the handle. I think that's a great metaphor. You got to tinker around with it.
Yep. And depending where you are, I work with a lot of small businesses as well. And I laid out the 5 steps of the Masterpreneur Playbook. And from working on the concept, working in your business, to working on your business, which is like optimizing your business. And I think that's the lower level of the hockey stick. Yeah. So there's 2 levels before that you got to figure out what your business is before you can optimize it.
That is so true.
So and that's one of the reasons why running a small business is so hard. There's so many stages and development and evolutions that you have to make as a business owner, and steps that your business has to take that most people never even see in half of that in their entire career.
Right.
And as a business owner, if you're going to just go from 0 to 10 million in revenue, you're going from like an employee to CEO level responsibilities.
Yeah.
And that's, there's so much learning that you have to do through the process to do it successfully. So, okay. So we talked about velocity. Anything else on the velocity, or do we want to take a look at the mass side as well?
No, I just emphasize the planning part of it and objectives. It's like, I think if you have a plan, you can always exceed it. But just flying by the seat of your pants, you may end up in Oz. It's like being in a tornado when you get in the middle of it. It's a little difficult. But yeah, I'm ready to talk about mass.
Okay, yeah, and I just drove to Charlotte, North Carolina from New Jersey last night, and on the highway you get really good velocity. But if you don't really know the directions, you got to stop different times with your velocity. So definitely that leads itself to focus and planning and knowing what you're doing and where you're going. So
yeah.
But
so if I could just kind of go into the mass part of it, and again, you're the engineer, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But this was probably one of the bigger not struggles, but something I had to chew on for a long time when I was writing the book about what is mass in business. I talked to Marcus, my physicist friend. He was very skeptical about it, but there was something he said as we were talking, and he said, 98% of the mass of anything is contained in its nucleus. And so, if you think about all the different elements, the periodic table that's out there, whatever it is, it's a configuration of what's at the very center of it. And so it just took me to a place of saying, well, what is at the center of a business? I mean, what is it besides you that you would say is the very core of what we're doing? And to me, it starts with, and let me go back and say, let's just kind of divorce ourselves from the idea that mass means sale size. It has nothing to do with size. If you take a bowling ball and a volleyball, they're basically the same size, but they weigh completely different amounts. And it's all about the density and everything that's packed into what you're trying to do. So if you start kind of picking apart a business, at the very outset is an intention, a powerful intention. Gerber would say, what's the one thing you do that nobody else would do? I mean, what have you figured out to do differently? I mean, what is the value proposition? I'm sure that comes up in your university a lot. But what is it that differentiates you that is so amazing that you would have weight in the market? You would be a respected brand just because you had undertaken to solve a problem for somebody that nobody else could solve. That is a huge part of it. And then you kind of pack onto that values, the mission, all these things that are a lot of times I feel like they're check boxes, that I've got my values, I've got my mission. It's the most important part if you're going to have mass. It's what you're all about. It's your very essence. And I would get frustrated, in different corporate jobs that I had about value statements that were acrostics, or that were, our values make the word awesome, or something like that. And that's not what it is. It's like something really deep and everlasting in that. So you've got the intention, the values, the vision, the unique value proposition is packed right in the middle of that. And who you are as a person, going back to leadership development, what your values are, what your experience is. I've said this in the book, but I had one of those bitter experiences early in my career in banking. I had my MBA, had a sufficient amount of work experience, I thought, to go for a big kind of corporate job at a bank. I didn't get anywhere. After it was over, my boss talked to the hiring manager and said, Chip, they're just looking for a heavyweight. And I just realized, I didn't like being a lightweight. And what it meant is that I had a lot of learning to do. I had a lot of personal growth to undergo so that I could be effective in that role. And when you get into leadership of a business, It bumps up against a principle from, my John Maxwell days called the law of the lid, is that you can only go so far. You can never surpass your leadership abilities, number one. And number two, you can never attract talent that's better than you are. So, the game is on for you to be an impactful person in starting the business. And then, that's the key, is like, get the best people, whether they're working directly for you or you're outsourcing things, you're finding people to fulfill certain roles for you part-time, while you're building your business up. Don't go to the family member. Don't go to the person that you just met at a Kiwanis meeting, or you met and they said, hey, I do digital marketing. Go to the heavyweight, go to the very best and figure out how to pay them for it, because that's the impact. That's the heaviness in the market, is that, you've got competencies built around you, whether they're hired or, shared with other people. There's so much, fractional work that's being done now in marketing, finance. Get the very best. And that's what makes you a heavyweight company. So that's the mass that I like to talk about. And, the other 2% of any, physical part of it is the bonding. And that gets back to culture. How is all this stitched together? How are people attached to the vision, values, and mission that you put out there? Do they even know what it is? Do they hug it every day? Like, I love this. That's really important that they attach to that. But also, like, how do they attach to each other? Pencil lead and diamonds are basically the same material. The difference is how tight the pack is around all this stuff. And then you get all your customers that you're pulling in, the bonding with your customers. And so it took me a long time to really come up with a clear idea of how a small business can be massive. But I really believe that it defines the entrepreneurial field right now for innovation, is finding new ways to do things and doing it in a very lean way. And we probably have more opportunities now because of AI and all kinds of technology and different things, to be that company that can peel off a business, a dead business at a large company, and take it over, things that they've just completely forgotten about. If you have the intention for it, if you have the energy for it, if that's what gets you excited, is that you're going to solve that problem for people and to have the very best solution out there. So that's the mass that I'm talking about. And, you gotta manage it every single day. We've all made bad hires. We've all been distracted from our vision and values and mission in the heat of battle, but that's part of the leadership challenge. And having momentum in a business is constantly staying with that and making sure that where people are with it. Employee, call it workplace environment, employee surveys, or whatever. There's honesty in the company, and people can tell you whether they're getting it or not, looking at the results. And honestly, this as well as I do, Andrew, like, management, by walking around, like, do you see energy? I mean, it's like, when things are bonding, I think that, one of the principal differences between a mixture and a compound is the heat that comes off of it in a bonding experience. And like, when you're walking around and people are asleep at their desks, I don't think they're bonded to much. So I'd like to stop now. I feel like I've given a little bit of a thumbnail, and you and I can interact on this, but it is totally possible, in my mind, to be a massive player and still be small. I firmly believe that.
Okay. And it's really about, like you said, the nucleus, packing as much as you can into that in terms of your team.
And so if I could interrupt, I just want to tie back to something we said at the very beginning. You're like, what is the framework? This is the framework. And I would say, I don't know how many people are listening, but how many people have heard hire the best people? Is it in the framework of, this is absolutely essential to momentum? It's not like, hey, I heard a speaker and they said, get the best people, get people better than you, whatever. If you're not doing that, you're going to have a very hard time maintaining momentum in your business. It's as simple as that. It's a natural law, and it feeds into it very much. So use it. Use the framework, plug this into it.
Yeah. Well, but you also have to keep in mind everything's relative.
Yeah.
So, you got to define what the best person is based on your situation.
Right.
There's a lot of Michael Jordan's like the best, but that doesn't mean he's the guy that you hire for your company. So,
well, there's an art form to making great pieces work together.
Yes.
I don't know what these guys in Oklahoma City are going to get paid next year, but I don't think anybody expected it to be, the championship.
Right. Well, definitely, it's always interesting. They say, anybody can win any day. So, definitely possible. So now, I like the mass piece. I think that, when you combine the velocity, the right strategy, the right plan, the right knowledge, and then, combine that with the right team and the right expertise to implement it successfully. That's a super powerful combination. So, really building that and figuring that out. So now, one thing about most small businesses is you always have cash flow issues, even medium.
Okay.
So, we've got a question from the audience for those just starting out. How do you recommend building momentum on a limited budget? Because that's where most business owners are. What are some of your strategies or tips for how you?
Yeah, I think. Let me think about a thoughtful answer to this. I think a principle of, as we were talking about earlier about the blade of the hockey stick. It's a pretty safe bet that even your best case scenario in your mind about getting to positive cash flow, multiply times 3 on the amount and the duration that's going to take. So I think that capitalization on the front end, as you decide to be really intentional about fulfilling this, is that you've got to give yourself time for that hockey, the blade of that stick, for all this to get fleshed out. I mean, I think that's my first recommendation to anybody is, if you're doing this part-time at night to get started, you've got cash flow from another job, or you've built up savings and you feel like you're about to make a run at it. I would just assume that, not that you're going to go out of business like a fearful thing, but just a acknowledgement of the reality of how long it takes to figure it out. I mean, I think the capitalization part, and that goes into another conversation about, what money is available to me. Is it angels? Is it family? Is it, do I leverage up my home for it? But it is like, it's such a reality that people have to confront that in the end is the lifeblood of a business is cash. And, if you haven't acknowledged it, you're probably going to be in that 50% that don't make it. That's number one, is being just completely clear-eyed about this is, unless you got a big contract before you left your job and you have immediate cash flow, it's going to take a while. The second thing that I talk a lot about in the book about cash flow is, people would say, come into the bank and say, I need a working capital line of credit. It's permanent money. And almost always, as I started to pick everything apart, or, we'd have analysts pick this apart. Sometimes it was growth. It was just, a lot of asset generation. They needed financing for it. There were receivables. There's a lot of growth. But most of the time, there was not a profit equation that they adhered to. And, you can't have cash when you don't have margins. And I think sometimes, people get into business and they undervalue the weight of the value proposition they're bringing to the market, and don't get paid enough for it. And until you're honoring yourself with a fair price for everything that you put into it, you're going to have, even in an established business where you have revenue, you're going to have cash flow problems. It's not a bank account problem. It's what you're selling your product for relative to what it costs you to produce it. So I would just say that very early on in the business, the temptation is going to be to get the product out the door and get as many customers as you can. And I think you've got to build this boundary with yourself about what you're worth, about what you're doing for people is worth, and just really dig your heels in that you're going to get paid that. If it takes a while to find the right person to pay you for that, you've got to do it. And once you've established a base that you can start multiplying from, I think it's time to get on with the growth. But I see people undervalue their services all the time. And I just think that it's a basic thing. Now, the final thing I'd say about cash, I have 2 chapters at the end of the book. One is on leverage and one's on liquidity. So both of these kind of figure into what we're talking about here. And to me, it's called the liquidity one is friction. It's all about margins and cash. The leverage chapter is really about money sources. And what I would just say or caution people about, it's like a Star Trek episode to me, is that money is probably the most vanilla commodity that you could come across. The only difference is where it gets its characteristics from is who owns it. So I may have different expectations for my money than you would have, Andrew. And a bank certainly has different expectations in pricing and terms and all of it than a hard money lender that's out there. And you have to keep in mind that, money looks like it's the same everywhere, and it's not. There are multiple forms of money, all characteristics of money. I have been at war in my mind for years with online lenders. Love the convenience of it. You start looking at the debt service requirements, not only the rate, but like how you're expected to pay it back. It's brutal. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. Yeah. And I would just say, do the homework. When you start figuring out, like, I need 50,000 or I need 20,000 or whatever it is, like, be very judicious about the characteristics of the money that you're getting, because it can be very punitive if you haven't picked the right source. So I've answered the question, or at least opened up a dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered like a whole bunch of valuable things. So I just want to unpack a few of them. And I think one of them is most small businesses undercharge for their services. And that puts you at a disadvantage. You can't win on price when you're small because your costs are higher. So that means you're squeezing your margins and you're not making enough money. I'd say, one thing that goes hand in hand with that is many times businesses aren't at scale. So the reason why they have a lot of, I'd say probably 90% of problems that businesses I talk to and see have is they're just not selling enough stuff. So it's not necessarily about financing. Your problem, maybe you feel the symptom of not enough cash.
Yeah, it's not the percentage margin; it's the gross dollar margin that's flowing toward all the expenses, right?
Yeah, well, and actually just making enough revenue, and having enough revenue with the right margins. So no, I think that's super important. Definitely, I like the leverage and liquidity. But that brings back to, like the most important job I see is, sales and marketing. And that's one of the biggest deficits in most companies. And then once you get the sales and marketing right, it's about numbers and analysis. Most people don't do that or don't understand their business. Multi-million-dollar business. I'm with the CEO. I'm teaching them about the financial statements. You can't really understand how your business works if you don't understand the financial statements. You could be in business 20 years, but I could tell
it astounds me, Andrew. Like, some businesses, like how they made it as long as they did with no information.
Right. So, because I mean,
Bank account, I guess that's the
you know, I mean, business, like I said, business is really about, you can sell more and you can make money and stay in business if you at least, charge more than it costs you.
Yeah.
But to run your business like a pro and professionally, and to be as profitable as possible and be able to grow and, avoid pitfalls, then that's a whole different story. And most business owners are sort of surviving, but don't really know the levers that they can pull to really make their business thrive.
Right.
And I think that's where the fine tuning and a lot of the knowledge and experience and expertise, that's what helps you to be able to do that more effectively.
Yeah. And I think I haven't seen every comment on here, but I think one of the most powerful things that can happen for small business owners is a network. I'm a huge believer in mastermind groups.
Yeah.
Free is not typically the best, but in a collaborative environment, sometimes it is. If you find the right team of people around you, you go from needing employees to gathering ideas and finding people to execute them for you. It can take the sales pressure out of the equation where everybody's coming at you with the idea that's going to fix it for you. And it's really hard to discern, especially with a seasoned salesperson that's telling you that their stuff is the best. I just highly recommend a band of like-minded people of all ranges of experience. That doesn't cost anything. You shouldn't have to pay for it. Find your alliances with people that have been there and have some level of discernment about key decisions that you're going to make, especially in sales and marketing. You're right, Andrew. Finding a great salesperson. Going back to the Gerber, entrepreneur, technician, manager, like finding a gifted salesperson that's also the technician is pretty unusual.
Right.
Or a technical field of, maybe in engineering, like the most technical person might be the best salesperson, but it's not typically how it works.
Right. But you as a business owner have to be able to make the decision. Mm-hmm. And that's where your knowledge and experience and mentoring and support come in, because, like you said, there's a lot of people can tell you they're the best. And a lot of them, some of them that seem like they really aren't. They're just good at sales and marketing. So you have to have the ability to.
And in the background of that, Andrew, let's not ignore what we just talked about, the limitation of resources. It's like somebody comes and says, I'm your social media person, I'm your marketing person. It's $15,000.
Yeah.
That's like your one big bet. At a really early stage of business, like if that was a poor decision, it's going to be hard to recover from it. So
yeah, yep. No, I think that's right. You really got to learn, and I'd say especially with sales and marketing, because there's so many things you can do, but there's a lot of people out there who are good at tools, but aren't necessarily great at strategy.
Aligning the marketing to your strategy for your client.
Right.
It's wisdom. It's just irreplaceable. Like, I could probably find 100 people that knows how to get something on digital media.
Right. But for your business. So,
right. But is it completely aligned with what you're trying to do? It's a big question.
Definitely. So, an hour goes really fast. So,
wow, it has. I tell you what. Yeah.
Before I let you go, I always like to sort of ask each guest to really share 3 key things
Uh-oh.
in our conversation tonight that everyone should be able to take with them and really be able to look at implementing or benefiting starting tomorrow. I mean, I think most people can only remember three things. So it sort of just focuses them on how to make this actionable. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about that and just share a little bit about, one of the things that we're doing for entrepreneurs and business owners, which I think is super valuable. So I'll give you a minute, Chip, to pull up your three. And here's a short video about something we started doing for business owners this year.
All right.
Oh. Okay. Hold on.
Every great business owner needs an expert financial management team. As your business grows, you're going to need more comprehensive financial expertise to help you with these activities. Financing growth, managing cash flow, maximizing profitability, strategic planning and budgeting, accurate, timely information for decision-making, determining the appropriate staffing and inventory levels, and preparation for and analysis of potential opportunities. At this stage, you may not have the budget to hire multiple financial professionals from different firms. However, we can provide an outsourced team with over 100 years of experience in CFO, controller, accounting, tax, and bookkeeping to provide the expertise you need when needed. We will help you with your financial needs from A to Z. Whether you need bookkeeping, we will organize and enter your financial information. Accounting, we will provide accurate, timely financial reporting with analysis of key information and trends. Taxes, we will help you with tax preparation, reporting, and submission. Or CFO services, business strategy, financial projections, KPIs, or financing. We've got you covered from A to Z. Use the link below to schedule a complimentary discovery session. You have nothing to lose. Use the link below to explore how we can help.
Okay, welcome back to Leadership Live. I'm here with Chip Higgins, and we're talking about powering your business to maximum momentum. Before we close out, Chip's going to share with us three key takeaways from our discussion this evening.
So, Andrew, the first thing I did was go back to my speed formula, and I just squared it. So I have 9. No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously. I think the number one thing to me is check your intention for who you're trying to help and be unique. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. We put a lot of emphasis on SWOT analysis, competitor analysis, competitive advantage. And that uniqueness is so critical, not only to like the sales volume, the top line, but your margin and getting paid for it. So number one, be unique in your field. It takes a lot, it's going to take some energy to understand what everybody that you consider a competitor is doing and how you're going to find the space that you do it better. So that's number one, is be unique. Number two is be connected. I saw a question in here about customers and trust. As I said earlier, carbon and diamonds are basically the same material, but the bonding in the diamond is infinitely greater. And so the challenge for small business owners, maybe you don't get a former C-level person from corporate America to join your team. Maybe it's a recent graduate. Maybe it's someone with a lot of potential. That might not be, a 9 or a 10 yet, but they're emerging. The one thing you can control is how they're connected to you, to the organization, what it represents and the values, and to each other. I mean, it's huge. Like the idea of connection over communication is extremely important to me. And it really factors into your customer cycle too, that you're connected to them and taking their feedback all the time to always be at a competitive advantage. That would be the second one. And then number three is that planning. And planning isn't a one-time event. It's a process. It's a discipline, a lever in your business. It's going to separate you from everybody else that you compete against, because you understand the market and the industry and where you can play effectively better than anybody else. And I don't know what you recommend in the university, Andrew, but I'm a big believer in the rolling 3-year plan, and you've got to be refreshing it every single year and getting input from everybody. So I think those are my three: be unique, be connected, and have a plan and stick to it.
Excellent. So number one, be unique, and really, you can't do that without analysis, understanding your capabilities, understanding your industry, understanding your competitors.
Right.
So sometimes you have to move slow before you can move fast. But that's what it takes to be unique. Definitely connections. Business and life are about relationships, and building relationships is key with the right people, but building deep relationships, not about giving someone your business card and being like, oh, I know them.
Yeah.
It's really about having a real connection. And then planning, things change. It's important to prepare yourself and to really, I always say, I don't know if you're a fan of football, but there was a movie, Any Given Sunday. And, the biggest line I always take away from that is see it before you do it. He saw the touchdown before he went and did it.
Right.
And that's all planning is. It's like a free opportunity for you to see what you're trying to do and get a feel for whether it's going to work, rather than doing it and figuring out if it works after the fact. So no, I think those are extremely valuable comments. And no, this has been great. Anything you want to share before we close out?
I just share my heart that I love small business people. I mean, it's been my life, and it's been the most richly rewarding experience to meet so many interesting people, people that are trying to make a difference and do things differently. All I would say is, for all the entrepreneurs that are listening to this, I just wish you the very best. You can beat the odds, get good advice. You can beat the 50% odds, and just get out there and do it. Have a plan, but do it, because the world needs new stuff. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Andrew, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love talking business, and you're obviously an expert, so it's a very rewarding conversation for me.
Okay, excellent. Same here. And from the questions and comments, I know that the audience is getting a lot out of it as well. So, it's always great to have guests like you that share things that people can really utilize and help them with their business. So, definitely we're going to close out the show. If you can hang on for a few minutes, that would be great. And let's put me in. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what's next. So I guess we're coming up on July 4th, holiday week, but we still have our show coming up next week. And really looking forward to that. And actually, we're going to talk about what to do when things don't work out. As Chip said, not everything always works out in business. And we're going to talk about something most people don't talk about is, when you get into trouble and you got financing, what do you do? How do you handle it? Because there's better ways than others. And, many business owners have gotten hurt really bad because of their financing, or they didn't take care of it in the best way possible. So, even if there's problems, there's things you can do and ways to handle it. So looking forward to having that conversation as well. Also, something very excited about is this year we're coming up on 5 years of Leadership Live at 8:05, talking small business. So September 30th is going to be our 5-year anniversary show. So we're planning some great things for that show. So hopefully you can join us. We've had over 200 guests and a lot of great content, and look forward to sharing something that I'm really excited with, that we're going to make available starting September 30th. So you'll hear more as we go. But as always, I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. It's always great having tremendous guests and being able to really talk small business with them. And appreciate your comments, questions, and ideas in the chat. So at the end of the day, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business is going to grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.com.